My name is Tanis, and today I'm going to be talking about the background, development, motivation, and whatnot of a Minecraft mod that I have currently in the planning stages before I move on to development. I'm going to talk a little bit about the research that I've done and what I hope to accomplish with it mechanically. I mentioned in a recent video that I would like to approach villager deaths and grieving. I got a great comment about how to establish cemeteries. I would love to have like villager funerals and stuff in order to help bring more weight to the loss of individual villagers. I also have in the planning and design stages an overhauled profession system. Currently got about 20 professions that encompass everything from wood gathering and processing to stone gathering and processing, food, and other materials. There's some overlap with the existing Minecraft villagers, but there's also some broadening. I want to cover a lot of what I think should be like early game professions, with the idea of making individual villager trades more immersive so that when a player happens upon a village, then whatever aspect of the game they prefer to do, whether it's mining, logging, they should be able to take their player agency and be able to leverage it locally in a village so that they don't necessarily have to engage with all of the game's mechanics. Basically, to have a network of different villager professions that sort of enable one another and make it feel more like a community to depend on each other and less like random. Now, there's an important connective tissue to all of that, and that's actually what I want to talk about today. I love monsters. In particular, I love the undead and I love demons. I have a fascination with the afterlife and with spirits and, you know, the other world. Honestly, the media has been so saturated with zombies in the last 20 years that I don't really watch zombie movies anymore, and I don't even play zombie games, mostly because it's all a retread of the same thing. You know, every now and then you'll see something cool and slightly different, like 28 Days Later or The Last of Us, come along and do a new spin on it. You know, the Resident Evil series has been pretty good at innovating on its zombie concepts. But at a certain point, it's like, I feel like we're getting away from what makes zombies compelling. How much does a zombie mean to any given player? That zombie doesn't matter. That zombie isn't anybody that the player ever knew. The most compelling zombies are the ones that force you to confront your own mortality. Often, the scariest zombies are the ones you know. And I think an important connecting point is having the potential to encounter zombies of players and zombies of villagers. And I think that there's more that has to be established lore-wise before you can really pull that off. And that includes things like funerary rites and an afterlife concept and maybe even religious beliefs. Let me start off by saying that I am an atheist and I find religion fascinating. I don't believe in the supernatural at all. I don't believe in ghosts. I'm not a witch. I'm not anything. I mean, if I'm forced to identify with something, it's as an atheist, but for the most part, I don't care about religion, period. They are not a part of my life, and the only reason why I even think about them in passing is because, like everyone else does, I can't live on a world of 8 billion people and not have religion affect my life in some way, to touch my life in multiple ways. I live next to my sister-in-law, who's Mormon. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and while Mormons no longer constitute a majority of the population here, they are a vocal minority. It's inescapable. What I want to do is introduce religious concepts, belief, and magic into the context of a sandbox game. And right now, Minecraft is the sandboxiest of sandboxes. And I think it would be a lot of fun to explore the supernatural concepts in a digital analog for the real world. I feel like I need to make some other disclaimers. I don't know exactly what those disclaimers are. Like, I'm not so worried about the controversy. I mean, I'm broke, I'm trans. They can keep taking things away from me, but I am gonna run out of things for them to take away. The bathroom bill that the governor could sign into law any day now is going to take away my freedom to use a public restroom. So it's like, I'm gonna take the piss out of your religion. There's one in your eye. I've got game development motivations, right? I want undead to be affected by holy water. And it's hard to explain or justify holy water without a belief in the holy. It's difficult to have demons and, really get the most out of them if you can't have demonic possession. And if you have demonic possession, then you need to have belief in a divine entity in order to compel a demon to evacuate a possessed individual. Without those things, I think you lack a rational construct for a lot of magic. I think it's really easy to overlook just how pervasive religious beliefs are in everyday interactions with other people. Someone's belief in the supernatural affects them in profound and often invisible ways. Comes down to whether or not they believe that they will be punished. I want to address that, and I believe that I have a design framework in which to begin applying those things. Like right now, I have a framework of about a dozen beliefs or systems of belief. I think the elephant in the room that I need to address is Christianity. Because Christianity is one of those things that's really difficult to measure. There's not one, and while Christians might profess to all believe in the same savior figure, everything else is up for grabs. Looking at Christianity by era, there's like 4 like big groups. So like you have the Eastern Orthodox faith. It's like more scholarly, and it's based on reading and contemplation, and like it seems to mirror the rabbinic studies and stuff of Judaism. It's almost like a group of Jews who decided that the Messiah happened, as compared to the Jews who are still waiting. Then you have Roman Catholic, which like grew out of the apostolic era of those first few centuries and really consolidated around Rome and the Pope hierarchy. They're much more authoritarian. Like the head of state is also head of the religion, and so you have the Pope. And then, there's a lot of ceremony, there's a lot of ritual. Things very much stay the same over long periods of time. It's tradition, it's preserved. It could not be more intellectually different from Eastern Orthodox. After them, you have the Protestants about 500 years later, or the Reformed Church, which was like, all right, look, we're tired of taking orders from the Pope. Those Borgias are just awful. They're like, we're going to change everything so that people have an individual connection to God, and we're you know, and then the king's going to be the head of state, and the religions are all going to do their own thing, right? And so you have that era of Christianity, and then you have the modern Christianity, which is the fundamentalist, or the returned church. You had the apocalyptic church in those first few hundred years of the AD, and then you had the centralized church, which became the Roman Catholics. Then you had the Reformed Church, and then you have the fundies, who think that somehow they can apply the morals of 2,500 years ago to their modern situation and just completely disregard the last 2 millennia of social and spiritual development. So there's four flavors of Christianity. I really need to do more research on Judaism. It is one of the more consistent faiths, at least from my perspective, throughout the last 2,500 years. I know they've gone through reforms, and I know that there are there's fundamentalist, and there's the returning kinds as well. But it's harder to tell if you're not a part of the culture. And to me, I see Judaism as not at all like Christianity, where the the big church of the day went through schism. So there's Judaism, there's Islam, which it combines a healthy mix of the Eastern Orthodox, but decides to continue the prophetic tradition, where Jesus was a prophet, not the Messiah. And then you have Muhammad, who, if I remember correctly from my reading, because my comprehension of Islam is weak, Muhammad was the last prophet. Have all of the beliefs that stem from that. And I know that Islam has had its own schisms. I don't feel comfortable addressing those yet. I have way more research to do in that regard. So I'm currently looking at Islam as a monolith, Judaism as a monolith, and then important to me is the idea of attribution, which sort of introduced ideas and which were adopted by others. So important to me, of course, is representing Zoroastrianism. Likely pioneered the concept of dualism, the idea of good versus evil. Zoroastrianism was sort of codified in the first millennium BC, about the same time that Judaism was taking off, and was one of the major religions, particularly in Central Asia, that influenced the Asian and Middle Eastern religious beliefs. Likely there's a structure from Zoroastrianism which influenced Buddhism, in the sense of its metaphysics and how it constructs the world. And then Christianity draws from Buddhism in its ideas. It's sort of like you've got Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Buddhism, Christianity. And Christianity is kind of like this heir of almost 3 different other religions kind of mashed up. I want to represent those other 3. Like, Christianity has this concept of a soul, which is Greco-Roman philosophy and beliefs, which they went in their own direction with Hermeticism and the early Gnostic Christians, who were, more or less wiped out, and all of their ideas were stolen and incorporated into Christianity, except the other ones that they threw out with the Apocrypha. What I want to do is I want to take the animism and shamanism, and I want to kind of remix it with like medieval folklore and like modern folk horror, to get like this vertical profile, more of a spiritual category. Some of it is definitely like thumbing my nose at major religions who often fail to acknowledge the other religions in the room, but also trying to reconcile a lot of different fantasy tropes and monsters that really only make sense in their original context. Undead as a category of monster have evolved tremendously over the millennia. Where it was just like this one guy was so scary and so hard to kill, we're afraid he might not actually be dead. And you know, this woman has a baby after her husband has passed, and it's been like a year, and she's like, oh no, it's his child. Okay, so did she have, was she pregnant prior to his death? Did she have an affair? Was there something else going on? We'll just explain that by vampires. What about, people who experience these weird cravings or compulsions, or people who eat the dead? We have ghouls. We have people who, after they suffer massive brain damage, still continue to function almost as if they were alive, but seem really simple by comparison. Maybe we have zombies that way. Without religion to provide fantastical explanations to real world conditions and circumstances, ultimately, how do these things all map to one another, and how are they distinct, and which ones borrowed from whom? And I kind of want a foundation for how all the fantastical ideas come about. And I want a better organization for monsters and monster types, because I'm really tired of seeing monsters where, like, you can't predict how they work. When you realize that certain monsters are associated with certain types of beliefs, then you know why it is that ringing a church bell drives out fairies. And you know why you have to stake the feet of the serial killer when you bury him. I think monsters without religion are just boring. You have to have a belief system to function as a context for how different monsters work. And eventually, this is going to have to incorporate cosmicism, all of the pseudo-scientific eugenics from the turn of the century, and IQ and degeneracy, these cosmic forces that were bigger and older than humanity, things that drive men mad from the revelation. And I believe a lot of these modern beliefs can also be reconciled with past beliefs when you take into account the context in which they arose and which group came up with the new system of beliefs. So that's all stuff that you can look forward to, that I'm have been working on, am working on, and will continue to work on for the foreseeable future. I am out of breath. My name is Tanis. I am a software developer in desperate need of some patrons and some income. I hope that you were enlightened, or at the very least entertained, by something that I've said here. And I hope you will share and share alike. If you comment, I will attempt to read and reply. Be kind, please, in the comments. And I will hopefully see you next time.